Okay, so I'm over here at the mold, and I didn't have a coping saw, so I went out to get a coping saw to help kind of saw this off and form the mold. Here's one thing that I really didn't expect. Um, I saw how that contact cement reacted to the foam when I applied it, but I really didn't expect these voids. Now, these voids aren't going to be an issue. Again, this is just a mold, and I'm going to be using probably body filler to go over this to smooth this mold off um, and make it smooth because the mold side of the manifold that's built out of carbon fiber will become the intake, the inside of it. So I want the mold to be smooth. Um, I hesitated because there's some thought about having intake manifolds, like when you port a head, having intake manifolds rough. But that's not the case with a direct injection engine. It's only the case with a engine that's the fuel air mixture is mixed into the intake manifold. One of the things that I did is put the blade sideways so that the cut will just continue on down through, and the cut off material we feed out through. What I was having a problem with is this way I kept running into the mold itself. You don't really kind of want to rush into this because it's kind of hard to think in 3D how you want the thing to be curved out and curved into it. One of the things that I am kind of running into is I put the blade sideways as I just described in the previous clip in, but it's good for going this way, but hard to go the other way. It'd be nice if you had two coping saws, one blade going one way and one blade going the other way. But we'll get over it. We'll get through it. Kind of hard to hold the material steady too. Because of the material, it's a foam material, you can't really clamp it down. How much easier it would be to have a template of this thing so that you could go by it. So the first one was probably pretty hard because of the nature of this thing with the outlet being formed there. It's the mold, it has to be destructive or destroyed to get it out, because the carbon fiber is going to be formed around it. So you have to take the mold out of it after you're done with it. Take the mold out of it by destroying it. I'll continue along and bring you back as I make progress on it. Where it gets really thin, as the taper comes down, the glue is hard compared to the styrofoam, and the rasp kind of catches up on it, tore it out a little bit, but I can fill that in with body filler to shape it. I need to get you see what happens here? You see how it kind of is indented there because the rasp is riding on the hard glue, and it digs into the adjoining area of the soft foam. What my thought process on shaping this thing is even though it's going to take a turn, a 90-degree turn from where it comes in down into that plenum on the head. What my thought process is that if I start that linear flow, that curved flow around there, it's going to create a Venturi effect, which will draw the rest of the air, because it's where it comes out to the bottom of it, it's going to drop straight down. But if I create that Venturi effect of flowing the air down into the head, it's going to suck that other air along with it. It's coming along. I just don't want to take, even though that I can fill it in with body filler, I'm trying to be careful of not to take too much off of it. What I'm probably going to do here is cut this thing flush and add some cylinders to it to create that create where the silicone boot will hook up to it. So something along those lines. Probably, I don't know whether they beaded this. I'm probably going to want to form some kind of a bead on the end of the tube end, so that when you clamp this on, it's clamped around a bead, or you know what I mean, just so that it doesn't pull off on a straight, without having a bead on it, it could possibly pull off. Let me just kind of reiterate this part about the bolts. This is that plate that I had made, and I'm going to still use it to attempt to build a metal one, a metal intake, just to see what I can come up with and how I can do it. But this is a flanged area, the bolt holes for the flanged area. There would be a slot cut down the center of this thing, the slot that I've been talking about. Now, if this was part of this intake, it would, this thing would sit like that, close to the bolt holes. Now, this is the back side of it, or the side towards the middle of the engine. See, the bolts going down through would be no issue over here. But on this front side, the side towards the silicone boot or silicone hose or tube that's going to go into it, you've got bolt holes over here. And that's why I've got to build this side up so that I elevate this up in the air so that I can get the bolts into it. So now this is going to sit up kind of like that, and it's not going to set. I've got to probably balance it on something, but you see, I need to build it up in the air to be able to get the bolts in underneath that thing. So it's probably got to go up 2 of these, or 2 inches to the bottom of this. So it'll probably be up like that. Now I can round it over and taper it in and kind of feather it out to provide that curved flow of the air into the intake runner or the plenum of the head. But that's the reason why I have to build that bottom part up. And I haven't attached it yet. I've just left it that way so that it would be easier. This part would be easier to work with without having these formed onto the bottom of it. Okay, back on that carbon fiber mold, I had showed you the shaping process and all that was involved in that. Now what I've done is come over here. I added a little piece onto the bottom of this just because of the 4-inch outside diameter would have, there would have been a little flat spot in there. So what I'm going to do is just configure that in there. I've also added the 2 back pieces on. Again, these are the runners that go on top, and kind of the reason for this is that I have to get bolts in the back side of this. When I say the back side of it, it would be the side out towards the driver's side fender well. It would sit on the engine like this, but the bolts have to go in there, so I have to create a raised spot so that I can actually get the bolts underneath that thing to kind of conform to it. Now, I think it will be, what I was going to say is, originally I was kind of thinking about tapering this thing off to it, but there's bolts under there, so tapering it off to it, up to it, because just to give it more rigidity, kind of like an angle brace kind of effect, to hold that carbon fiber part up, to give it more support under here, so that it kind of braces it up into the air, or while it's being up in the air, being held up in the air, it kind of braces it. But anyways, I can't do that because I wouldn't be able to get the bolts into it underneath there. There's a bolt right in the center. I might be able to make kind of brackets that would go in between the bolts, but I'm not really sure that I need them. Maybe those brackets could be added afterwards if they are needed. So this is where I am with this right now. So I just glued these on there, contact cemented them on there. So I've got a lot of drive for like 24 hours before I can get back on the shaping of it. I'll pull off of this, wait that 24 hours, and while I'm waiting, I'll be doing something else on the truck. Okay, so I'm back at it again. I kind of walk away from it for a little while and just kind of think about it or do some other things. End up using a lot of body filler or something. You know what I want to do is get a pair of calipers or something and start checking the width of things. To me, this part here looks narrower than this part, but I'm not really sure. But let me bring you back. What I ended up doing is putting some witness marks, like an inch in from this end. Sorry. back working on the air intake, and I just realized what it looks like. Looks like the head of an old Kirby vacuum cleaner. Anyways, it's coming along. I've still got to extend this out a ways. I'm not sure. I was kind of thinking about maybe curving it a little bit too, but I'm not sure if I'm going to do that. I've kind of narrowed this this thing up. What the one issue that I do have is that it is curved bowed a little bit, and I've got to take that bow out of it before I ever form the carbon fiber around it. But I still want to modify it a little bit. I've got to think of a way. I was thinking of foam to fill in these voids so that I don't have to use a lot of body filler on it, which would add a lot of weight and make it difficult to peel out of the mold or peel out of the carbon fiber after it's completed, because basically this whole thing has got to be peeled out of it. Yeah, the whole thing has got to be peeled out. Well, what? No, yeah, basically the whole thing has got to be peeled out of it. But anyways, I'll bring you back. Okay, so what I did is I went out and got some great stuff. Now, this is the gaps and cracks filler, which I don't think is supposed to expand as much as the other ones. I didn't really want to buy the other one because I know it expands a lot and I don't want to deform the mold. But let's see how this works. Hopefully it won't do much of anything, because one of the things that I did after I had sprayed that great stuff in there is went back with a putty knife and kind of evened it out and tried to fill in some of the gaps that I didn't get. Now, whether that was a good thing or a bad thing is yet to be seen, but I'll let you know how it turns out. Okay, so I let that this great stuff harden for probably the WD-40 was over here because I used it to clean the putty knife off of that great stuff off the putty knife. I let that harden for like about an hour, and then I'm over here working it, and I gotta tell you, the stuff works great as far as taking it down and shaping it. I'm really happy. I was kind of surprised that because I know with the other great stuff that we used to use to seal holes, which was kind of fire rated, the stuff would stay tacky or sticky for a long period of time, and this stuff dried right up, and it's really easy to work with a scraper. And kind of where I used the putty knife, it kind of worked pretty good. Rest of it I'll probably do with a body filler. I mean, if I find any more big voids, I will use that stuff again. But probably most of it will be done now with body filler, just to kind of seal this thing, seal that foam off, so that I can get a good smooth finish on it for the inside of the air intake. I'll bring you back when I'm done with it. I'm back over here at the mold, and as you can see, or you should be able to see from the previous clips, I have added another layer on the bottom of it. Now, why I did this is If you can see that Sharpie line in there, and it's going to be hard to tell because of this, but what it was is it was bowed on the bottom, and I don't want it bowed on the bottom. It was bowed on the bottom, and also the bolts might not have fit. So what I did is added another layer to it. What I'll do is establish a straight line on this thing so this thing sits straight, and then take it over to like the table saw and just run it through the table saw so that I get a good straight flat bottom on it. I'll use the straight edge on it too. One of the things is I stuck a bolt up there before. These are one of the bolts, and I grabbed it, and with the only 2 layers on the thing, it was pretty close given the fact that you're going to have a flange on the bottom of it, so it might have been pretty close. So what I'll do is probably, when I cut that on the table saw along that straight edge, I'll probably cut it about 3/4 of the way up there, so it's got enough room to get a flange on the bottom that bolts to the top of the plenum of the head. Let me the flange that bolts onto this part. But anyways, just gonna let that dry. I'll mark a straight edge on it, take it over there, and cut it off. Then I probably got to fill a couple of more gaps with that grate stuff. There isn't really too many, but I'm not sure what I'm going to get in here with this new bonding here and me cutting part of it off. If I get any gaps in there, what I'll do is I'll wait until I cut that off to see if I do get any gaps in there. Then I can fill it all at one time. But there's a couple of void spaces in here that probably really need to be filled. I'll bring you back. I just wanted to kind of bring you over here one last time for today. What I did is transcribed a straight line on there, and because the ruler was wider than what the area that I wanted to cut it off at, I put one line on and then referenced another line dimensionally off of that line down farther, cut it, and what I've been doing is just taking the orbital sander and going over it a little bit. So that's the bottom of it now. Got a little dirt on it, but again, I just took the orbital sander, went over it a little bit, and we'll I've still got to get these circles made to affix onto here, and then I'm going to get body filler, fill in the areas. I think I'm going to use a body filler to round this area over in here so the bottom surface is more curved into it also. But anyways, I'll bring you back. So originally what I was going to do was get a 4-inch hole saw. What I found was a coffee can, an old coffee can that's 4 inches in diameter, and what I'm going to do is just cut it out, and I'll try and shape it to see if I can get it close enough. I'm not really sure if this is going to work. If it doesn't, I can always go back to the hole saw thing of using that to cut out pieces of foam to put on there. I want to try and keep it as round as possible, keep that flow from, keep it as round as possible to keep the flow from creating turbulence.
One of the things that I just want to kind of throw in here is some people might think these videos are too detailed or too long, or I kind of show too much of the build. Why I do it is because I hate watching videos trying to figure out how to do something and people skip over parts and they don't show you how a bolt goes in or how they got a bolt out or how the part was attached, and I just don't want to do that in my videos.
Okay, so I've got the 2 rounds affixed to the intake. Let them dry. I'm going to shape it. Going to go out and get some body filler. Just one note. I've got to put some kind of a rib onto the end of this, or towards the end of it. A little protrusion up all the way around, so when I slide the silicone boot over it, I can clamp it on, and that rib kind of prevents it from pulling back. I'm not really sure how I'm going to do it yet. If I'm going to, I might take a circular ring and put it around it and affix it with the epoxy, but I'm not really sure yet.
If you guys need any more information about this or want to know something, just leave a comment in the comment section and I'll get back to you about it, or maybe I can even put it in a video. But thanks for watching, guys. Hit that like button, subscribe, share it if you want.